The story that's breaking this evening, Prime Minister Modi has convened and chaired a high-level meeting this evening to review COVID preparedness in the country as cases are surging yet again. The Prime Minister has emphasized the need for enhanced lab surveillance and testing of all severe acute respiratory illness cases and a ramping up of genome sequences. Mock drills are to be organized again in hospitals to ensure preparedness. The Prime Minister's advisory follows respiratory hygiene and adherence to COVID-appropriate behavior. There is also, of course, the concern that it's not just COVID, but an enhanced influenza, which at the moment is leading to an increase in cases. Let me go to my first guest tonight is Dr. Randeep Guleria, Director Medical Education at Medanta, someone who was deeply involved with the COVID task force. Appreciate your joining us, Dr. Guleria. How do we see this sudden surge in cases, particularly in the last few days? Are we seeing a possible return of COVID in some parts, or is it influenza in this season?
So I think it's a mixture of both. We are seeing a surge in what we would say respiratory viral infection, which includes both COVID-19 and influenza. What we're seeing is that there are multiple factors which are causing this increase. One is that over the last few weeks or months, we've stopped COVID-appropriate behavior. Because of the change in weather and the humidity, the virus survives for a longer time in the environment. And there has been some changes in the virus in terms of a mild mutation in the form of an antigenic drift. All of this has led to an increased surge in cases. My own feeling is that as long as it is not leading to increased hospitalization and deaths, it's not going to be something that we should be very concerned about. But I do agree that we need to be very vigilant. We need to have very aggressive surveillance for any emergence of any new variants and be able to take action as early as possible.
What we are seeing, Dr. Guleria, particularly in the last few days again, is an increase in positivity rate in some parts of the country. Over 10% positivity rate in 14 districts, 5 to 10% in 34 districts, and about 7 states, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Himachal, Haryana, Goa, where we are seeing in pockets a rise in cases. So is this possibly more localized this time, that in possible districts we are seeing potentially a rise in COVID cases?
So it's going to be like a cluster which develops, because you may have 1 or 2 individuals who have the infection and they are more infectious, and they spread it to people in their community because they may be involved in an activity or a function which is there is a crowd and a large number of people have come together, and that has led to a surge in the number of cases in that area. The important thing here is that we need to do rapid testing to see that this cluster or increasing number is not related to any new variant which may be emerging. And that's why I think, as the Prime Minister has emphasized, we need to have aggressive genome sequencing so that we pick up a new variant if it is emerging as the cases increase.
Several experts, Dr. Guleria, are suspecting the new variant to be XBB 1.16 to be driving this surge. It's been reported in cases in Karnataka, Maharashtra, Puducherry, Delhi, Telangana, Gujarat, Himachal Pradesh. Do you see the need, therefore, that genome sequencing will have to tell us whether this indeed is the variant that perhaps is spreading at the moment?
Yes, it does seem that this variant is driving the surge in the number of cases. We will continue to see new variants as we know that the virus continues to mutate. And we have some variants which are of interest, but there are variants of concerns if they are causing more cases, if they're causing more severe cases, or they are developing a significant immune escape mechanism. And to really pick up a new variant, it's not just testing and seeing how many people are positive, but also being able to see that those who are positive, what is the genome sequencing data which tells you what is the variant which is driving this, and also to be able to see, is this variant leading to more hospitalization or is it leading to more severe illness?
You know, I had a bad viral doctor last week. I tested myself. I tested negative for COVID, but there is the worry of H3N2 influenza and H1N1 cases with a cocktail of symptoms: fever, cough, cold, headache, body aches. Is there a need, therefore, the moment that someone has any of these symptoms, one should go and get oneself tested once again for potentially COVID?
Yes, and I think, like you said, I have a number of patients who get themselves tested when they have flu-like symptoms, fever, cough, shortness of breath, body aches for COVID, and it turns out to be negative. And then I tell them to get themselves tested for influenza, and it turns out to be positive because the symptoms are very, very similar. And respiratory viral infections, whether it be coronavirus, the influenza virus, or other viruses like adenovirus or the respiratory syncytial virus, tend to be more during this time of the year. Therefore, if you have a flu-like syndrome, it's worthwhile to get tested, at least for COVID and for influenza, because we have treatment for influenza in the form of antiviral drugs, which we can give in those individuals who are at high risk of developing a severe illness and the elderly population.
But no need for masking, presumably, at this moment in public, social distancing. Do you really need to go back to any precautions at this moment? Would that be being alarmist?
So I think at this point in time, when we are seeing a surge in the number of cases, and we know that this is the time of the year where when in respiratory viral infections tend to increase till the weather settles and summer sets in, I think for that short duration, it may be worthwhile to actually mask yourself, wash your hands regularly, and try and avoid going to crowded places, especially indoor crowded places, because they can be a site for the spread of infection. That I think is something which would be a good thing to do, especially for those individuals who are at a high risk of developing severe infection.
But we've also had a very extensive vaccination program that has covered large sections of the population. A need to revisit that at all? That if is there a need to have a booster to look again at a booster dose, or do you believe that's not linked necessarily to this most recent spread of COVID?
So I think there are two things. One is the COVID part and the influenza part. If people have not taken the influenza vaccine, they should also get themselves vaccinated against influenza, and we have a vaccine for that also. As far as COVID is concerned, there is a good amount of natural immunity which we've got because of recurrent infection after the Omicron wave. But I think there would be at some point in time a need to look at another vaccine or a booster vaccine. But the important issue is to be able to really decide what should be the booster vaccine. Remember, the current vaccine that we're giving covers the Wuhan strain, which was the original strain. But we have come a long way from there in terms of the alpha, beta, delta, Omicron, and sublineages of Omicron. So if we need to have a vaccine, it should cover the new circulating strains. And ideally, I think we should do research to find a vaccine which could potentially cover the strains which may emerge in the future to give us protection which is more robust in the coming years.
Well, one final question, Doctor. There have been in recent months actually cases reported of long COVID. Someone who had COVID, Omicron also a year ago, now reporting an element of breathlessness in their activity. Is that another big cause of concern at all? Are you getting such cases?
Yes, as we've coming out of COVID and we're not looking at the acute management of COVID, we are seeing patients who have what we call long COVID. This is actually a multi-system problem. There are patients who have persistent cough. Many of them have fatigue. They're not able to concentrate. They have what they call brain fog. And some of them have insomnia, not able to sleep well. And we're realizing that COVID, unlike other viral infections, does lead to some long-term sequelae in some patients, and that needs to be addressed. I think we still haven't done enough research to really find out how this happens and what would be the ideal treatment strategy to deal with long COVID.
But what would you suggest to someone who has some of these symptoms, insomnia, breathlessness? What would you suggest?
So very often we really advise them to have a good sleep hygiene, some degree of good diet, meditation, yoga, breathing exercises, and some supplements. If they have a more acute problem, then some medication from the sleeping point of view, from the anxiety point of view. Some people continue to have palpitations and a high heart rate. We give medicines for that. And at times for respiratory problems, you sometimes do need to take an inhaler also.
Okay. Doctor, for now, what you're saying is just be wary. There's no need to panic, clearly. But a need for an element of wariness has once again crept into the system. And I think that was a reminder that was sent in by that meeting that the Prime Minister called today. I appreciate, Dr. Guleria, you joining me here at the top of the news today. Thank you so much. Thank you, Doctor. Okay, let's turn from there to the big story that we've been tracking for the last few days. First of all, India's tit for tat move after security loopholes in London were exposed on Monday that enabled Khalistani sympathizers to go on a rampage at the Indian High Commission in London. Now the Indian government has removed security or barricades from outside the British High Commission in the national capital and at the residence of the British High Commissioner in Delhi. This is being seen as a retaliation in a way for that violent protest that took place in London. Now, hours after India cut the security, the United Kingdom has deployed heavy security outside the Indian mission to keep Sikh radicals at bay. The London police parked more than 20 buses, mounted troops to patrol the streets as once again Khalistani staged a protest there outside the Indian High Commission on Wednesday. Now, all of this is coming against the backdrop of what's happening on the ground in Punjab, where the clock is clearly ticking for fugitive Khalistani leader or Khalistani sympathizer Amritpal Singh. The Platina bike that Amritpal was running away with was found abandoned about 45 kilometers away from Jalandhar. The police are at the K Army Chief's residence and have questioned his wife in connection with alleged foreign funding. The police insist that they are closing in on Amritpal. Our reporters on the hunt for Amritpal Singh.
Day 5 of the hunt. Police and security agencies on the lookout for the fugitive Khalistani ideologue who may have undergone any of these possible makeovers. Clean shaven or bearded with different styles of turbans and attire.
इस केस में हमारे पास इसके फोटोग्राफ्स जो पुराने काफ़ी सारे फोटोग्राफ्स पड़े हुए थे जो अलग अलग बेस में थे इसके फोटोग्राफ्स, वो हमने आज वो फोटोग्राफ्स रिलीज़ किए और हम सारे पंजाब निवासियों को, सब लोगों को अपील करते हैं कि ये उनके रेफरेंस के लिए हैं फोटोग्राफ्स और इसमें हमारी जो पुलिस को इसको अरेस्ट करने में मदद करें.
So far, more than 100 people have been arrested on suspicion of links with Amritpal Singh. The 30-year-old man married an NRI woman from the UK last month in a tightly guarded ceremony. On Wednesday, police questioned his bride, Kirandeep Kaur, at their village home in Amritsar district. Amritpal Singh's mother was also questioned. Police recovered the bike that Amritpal was seen riding pillion while escaping. The getaway motorcycle was found abandoned 45 kilometers from Jalandhar, along a canal. India Today has accessed footage of Amritpal Singh giving police a slip on Saturday. From switching cars to fleeing on a motorbike after an intense chase through Jalandhar district, caught on surveillance cameras. Police in Rajasthan and Uttarakhand in action. 7 people questioned in Sri Ganganagar in Rajasthan. Search operations on along the Nepal border in Uttarakhand. Posters of Amritpal Singh and his wanted aides put up in key localities in the hill state. The dramatic unravelling of a separatist in less than a year after his theatrical appearance in the Sikh religious sphere. With Kamaljeet Sandhu, Manjeet Sehgal, Arvind Ojha and Satyendra Chauhan. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, while the hunt for Amritpal continues domestically, there is the other big hunt, the hunt for fugitives. That's right. Remember, 2 days ago, the Central Bureau of Investigation was caught off guard when the Interpol suddenly withdrew the red corner notice against fugitive jeweler Mehul Choksi, who's been based in Antigua for several years now. The CBI now has sought a restoration of that red corner notice. They also insist that this lack of red corner notice won't affect extradition proceedings. But past experience shows getting a fugitive back is a long-drawn process. Why is it that so many of India's most wanted seem to get away and cannot be extradited easily? That's going to be my big focus. But first, take a look at this report.
Mehul Choksi wanted in India for his role in the 13,000 crore rupees Punjab National Bank scam. The CBI's efforts to bring back the fugitive diamond trader suffered a blow when Interpol revoked a red notice against him. The CBI, however, has put up a brave front. While it has sought restoration of the red notice against Choksi, the agency claims the withdrawal of notice won't have any impact on his extradition. The question comes, what is the purpose of a red corner notice? According to Interpol's law, a red notice is to seek the location of a wanted person. The notice seeks their detention, arrest, or restriction of movement. Based on the notice, law enforcers can seek extradition, surrender, or similar action. Interpol red notice against Choksi was issued in 2018 on the request of Indian authorities. He was later located in Antigua. Extradition proceedings are on in a local court there. But since he fled India, Choksi has taken citizenship of Antigua and Barbuda. Bringing back a fugitive is a long-drawn process that often takes years. Among the fugitives wanted by India are many who are accused of financial fraud. They include businessmen Nirav Modi, Vijay Mallya, Nitin and Chetan Sandesara, and Islamic preacher Zakir Naik. While extradition and deportation are a difficult and challenging process, the Indian agencies have got some success in the last few years. Some of these cases are Christian Michel, an accused in the Augusta Westland chopper scam. He was extradited by the UAE to India in December 2018. He has been in jail since then. Rajiv Saxena, a Dubai-based accountant and accused in the Augusta case, was brought to India from Dubai in 2019. He was later arrested by the Enforcement Directorate. The CBI has so far managed to bring back 32 fugitives against whom red corner notices were issued. As per Interpol database, 277 Indians have active red notices against them. With Munish Pandey in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
So why is it so difficult to extradite some of India's most wanted? Are extradition laws riddled with loopholes? Why is an Interpol red corner notice also not working in many cases? Does the Indian government need to do more to put diplomatic pressure on countries like Antigua? Joining me now is Anatoly Yarovi. He is an extradition and Interpol lawyer based in Cyprus. CA Aryama Sundaram is senior advocate at the Supreme Court, and Yashovardhan Azad is former IPS officer. I want to come to you there, Anatoly, first, because we've seen in India a mixed record when it comes to extradition, that even with friendly countries, and Antigua is a friendly country, it's a Commonwealth country, we've been unable to extradite someone like Mehul Choksi, who is someone who's got Antiguan citizenship 5 years ago. But do you believe it would be that difficult to extradite someone from a friendly country like Antigua?
Well, to me personally, it was quite expected, this outcome was expected because other than political and diplomatic nuances, as you mentioned correctly, which matter in the extradition cases, there are also issues related to legal framework, human rights observance, and other issues. So it's not only diplomatic and political issues which are crucial for the outcome of the extradition procedure or for the Interpol red notice cancellation. And why was it expected for me in this case? Because according to Article 2 of the Interpol's constitution, international police cooperation is possible with in the spirit of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it means that human rights must be observed in the scope of such cooperation. And what we see in the matter of, in the case of Mr. Choksi, I will give you two very vivid examples why extradition was hindered. There are much more factors and arguments, but these two are sufficient in itself. So first, when Mr. Choksi was arrested in Dominica, you remember, the Prime Minister of Antigua made a statement, a public statement. He said, well, and he is political figure, one of the highest political actors in Antigua. And he said, well, I think Mr. Choksi should be surrendered directly from Dominica to India. Like this statement itself, it's a flagrant violation of all principles, basic principles of international law, because first of all, Antigua has constitution which forbids it to extradite its own citizens. And as far as we know, Mr. Choksi has acquired citizenship of Antigua. It's now under question because revocation of his citizenship is being considered by Antigua, but legal fact at the time is still that he has citizenship. So the first argument against extradition, and because how someone can face a fair trial in his home country when he can't encounter any justice internationally, you know.
So
second argument.
So you're saying Mr. Choksi has been able to use in a way or his lawyers have been able to use sections within Interpol's own code to claim that there could be potential human right violations involved and he needs a fair trial. Most importantly, because he has citizenship of Antigua, that makes his extradition more difficult. Aryama Sundaram, you know, prima facie though, here is a country which is a member of the Commonwealth, with which we have a good relationship. Are you telling me, Aryama Sundaram, that we could not have done more to get Choksi back? You remember we had actually sent a plane to Dominica when he was brought there. Many believe he was abducted and he was on his way back to India, but he somehow managed to go back from Dominica given what the court there said. We are looking at small Caribbean nations who are not willing to cooperate with India.
Rajni, before you come to that question, and you talk about Antigua being a member of the Commonwealth, what about England? England is the origin of the Commonwealth. And we have taken a long time, and not yet successfully, been trying to extradite someone from England. And that's even longer than what's gone on with Choksi here. Look, the fact of the matter is different countries have their own manner of dealing with extraditing people. For example, you gave examples of where quick extradition had taken place. That's because it is Dubai. In Dubai, extradition proceedings go on very quickly. In England, extradition proceedings take a long time to go on because there are various issues. It's not just executive, then the magistrate has to cover it. Then after that, the courts have to be satisfied of a prima facie case. There's a whole procedure involved there, which is why extradition of people, although we have been successfully pressing for their extradition at different levels, has still not happened from England. So the fact of the matter is, to a great extent, it depends on the country and its legal process, the legal rights it gives for this extradition. The second very important thing here is you must realize that Choksi got himself a citizenship before he went to Antigua. And he went to Antigua before there was any red corner, before the scam even erupted over here. He had already gone there. Well, he was very clever. He managed to do that. And for Antigua, it's a question of extraditing an Antiguan citizen, which is where the third question arises. On this human rights issue, the Dominican court found fault with the manner in which Choksi had been caught and brought in there. And they found that there was a violation of a human right there. And what Dominica said is, since he's a citizen of Antigua, let Antigua decide what they want to do with him. We're sending him back to Antigua.
Yes,
because
but
his
the
illegal
fact is,
entry was from Antigua to the Dominican Republic.
I mean, you know, nothing is to stop the Antiguan authorities from saying, look, this man is most wanted in India. He took his Antiguan citizenship only to try and get away from the law in India. I appreciate that in the United
Absolutely.
Kingdom there is a very
Which is
complicated
why
legal
step one
process.
is to revoke that citizenship. Absolutely, because step one is to revoke his citizenship.
Yes.
Now let's take revoking a citizenship is not an easy thing, which is why right now the first aim is to get that citizenship revoked. Once it's revoked, you'll find that the entire procedure hastens up. I fully agree with you, Rajdeep. There's no doubt it was a premeditated attempt to get a citizenship, to escape the long arm of the law so far as India was concerned. He successfully managed to get that citizenship, but that citizenship ought to be revoked and hopefully will be revoked. But till it is revoked, he has that added armament to prevent a quick extradition because he's an Antiguan citizen. So therefore that has to be done first, and that's certainly necessary.
You know, Yashovardhan Azad, the level of cooperation between Interpol and our authorities, we've seen it even in the past in Lalit Modi's case. Interpol eventually dropped the red corner notice in the case of Lalit Modi. We've seen it in some other cases like the Sandesra case, where even the Nigerian authorities have been refusing to cooperate. It seems that we have limited leverage with several countries and with Interpol. Is the problem with Interpol? And is this a general problem that most countries face, that outside of the UAE, with which we now seem to have a much better working relationship, in many of the Western countries, it's become more and more difficult to get Interpol to stick to red corner notices and to get cooperation from the governments there?
Well, it's not only the fault of the Interpol. In fact, in this particular case, when we already know that Mehul Choksi is in Antigua, even the withdrawal of the notice really doesn't make a difference if you have an extradition treaty. And Arema is right when he says that Mr. Brown said that they would like to revoke his citizenship, but he's fighting the courts, and hence the delay is taking place. Now, these two places...
That was 3 years ago, Mr. Azad. 3 years ago was was when Mr. Brown, the Antiguan Prime Minister, had said that they were looking to revoke his citizenship. It's not happened.
Yes, and that is why the courts are taking very long. But another point which I'm telling you is that the economic offenders from all over, they are seeking refuge only in places like Pacific and the Caribbean for this particular reason only. And there are many who are now settling down in Pacific and Caribbean because they can buy citizenship. But as Aryama said very rightly, even in the case of England, we've had extradition treaties since 1992. How many cases have been extradited? Both in the cases of Vijay Mallya or in the case of Nirav Modi, the same thing is happening. But they're going to use the human rights. Both of them use the Indian jail conditions as one of the reasons. And for one reason or the other, their extradition order, which has been made, is being held back. And Nigeria is another place where the great Chetan, Nitin brothers are there. And they have a liability of about 9,700 crore. You know, my contention is that it is well known that this extradition takes a very long time. But see, in the case of Vijay Mallya and in the case of Choksi, the total asset liability there is 19,000 crore. And these assets have been attached. It is time to realize the money. That is a more important route to take than trying to get their extradition, which is going to take longer and longer.
Let me for a moment ask you, Anatoly, this practice of buying citizenship in the Caribbean, in your experience looking at these cases, is that in a way now a global practice? We are looking at these cases before us like that of Mehul Choksi, but we are told that more and more of those who are among the most wanted are turning to these small Caribbean countries and getting protection there.
Yes, this issue raises concerns worldwide. You remember a huge scandal in Cyprus, I think it was 5 years ago, with golden passports, so to say, when Cyprus authorities have put under question hundreds of people who, let's say, got citizenship through investment. And it's also an issue in the Caribbean region because getting citizenship through investment must meet some criteria, such as the money which are invested in the country must be clean and must not be proceeds of crime. So it must not be a form of money laundering.
But these are proceeds of crime. The fact is these are in many cases proceeds of crime.
This is what I wanted to tell you, because a few minutes ago you discussed it about revocation of citizenship. It can be recognized. It's a very important point for our for people who watch us to understand. So to avoid any manipulation, because we are not politicians, like we are lawyers. So the point I want to deliver that money which Mr. Choksi or anyone else has invested in some country, Antigua, doesn't matter, to get citizenship, can be recognized as proceeds of crime only when there is a court verdict in some country, in this case in India, which would establish that crime took place, and secondly, the proceeds of that crime were taken out of the country, because otherwise principle of presumption of innocence is undermined, and we fall into legal nihilism, and whoever can say whatever and cancel and do whatever legal matters. So there is presumption of innocence principle here in place,
right?
And what I would like to add regarding India and Interpol, I think it's not problem of Interpol that India fails to achieve purposes of the red notices which were initiated by India. It's a bit also problem of India. It must enhance and improve its national proceedings and meet certain criteria for fair trial, among others established by Article 14 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And
let me take what you're just saying. Let me take what you're saying to Aryama Sundaram. Is this perception that and Vijay Mallya has said it, saying that he is not guaranteed a fair trial in India. We've got Mehul Choksi saying that in Antigua. Is there a problem that we should be worried about, that these fugitives get away by telling courts, whether it's in United Kingdom or Antigua or Nigeria, that they can't get a fair trial in India?
Well, I'm very sorry, but it reflects badly on those countries which actually lay credence to something like this. India is a country well known for the rule of law, for our fair trial. It's become very fashionable for non-Indians to say that, oh, the Indian trial system is not good. We have the most robust system. We have a rule of law here. Our courts are completely independent. And the fact of the matter is that this is, in every case, something which will be taken up by any Indian. It has now become a habit, a fashion, to say jail conditions in India are not good, I will not get a fair trial, and I am very sorry, especially if countries which claim they have courts which have fair trials were to feel that India doesn't. I'd love to know how. I mean, we're a country where the rule of law is so well protected, where everyone is given an opportunity right up to the Supreme Court to try to defend themselves if they are found guilty. Now, the point of it is, it's become fashionable to claim that the conditions are not all right, the rule of law is not fine, but I'm sure that countries like England, countries like the United States, other countries like this, who also have our democracies, who have a healthy rule of law, will appreciate that India also has it. And I can only feel very sorry that if any impression is sought to be projected and moved around, maybe by various organizations which call themselves, organizations of human rights, who claim to say that India doesn't have a rule of law. I'm sorry, I cannot subscribe to it at all. Let me tell you, I doubt courts in England or courts in America will subscribe to it. I'm sure they will not.
Okay, there are some test cases coming up of that in the weeks ahead. We are waiting to see what happens with Nirav Modi, for example. He's already been convicted in UK courts. He is expected to be extradited. That could well become a test case. But for now, Mehul Choksi at least seems to be out of the arms of law. I appreciate my guest joining me here on my talking point this evening. Let's turn from there to the other big story that we've been tracking, the unseasonal weather, from earthquakes that were witnessed across North India yesterday to heavy unseasonal rains in Mumbai and other parts of the country to snowfall at the moment in Uttarakhand. We are seeing natural calamities in weather conditions across the country at the moment. Rajasthan also witnessing heavy rainfall and the hill states receiving massive snowfall. Mumbai having just witnessed its highest ever rainfall for the month of March. Are we seeing a dramatic change in weather patterns? Mahesh Palawat, meteorologist, joins me from SkyMet on my other big story today. Mr. Palawat, explain what we are seeing around us. Snowfall in several parts of North India, heavy rain in Rajasthan, in parts of Maharashtra. Is this again climate variation?
Yes, Rajdeep, we are witnessing turbulent weather, erratic weather conditions since December. December 2022 was warmest on record, and in the month of February, we have seen the maximum temperature across the country was also warmest since last 122 years. And now the weather activities have intensified in the second half of March. The western disturbance, which were almost absent until December, they appeared in January and given good rainfall and snowfall over hills, leading to dip in temperature and cold wave condition across the country. Now, after the second week of March, suddenly weather changed and western disturbance reappeared, giving heavy downpour over hills and snowfall over Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh. And they endured the cyclonic circulation over Rajasthan and central parts of Pakistan, and a trough was extending from that area to Tamil Nadu. And winds from Bay of Bengal as well as from Arabian Sea were feeding moisture over central parts of the country, leading to heavy downpour and hailstorm activities over Rajasthan, parts of Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Delhi NCR, Uttar Pradesh.
But is this a one-off? Is this a one-off, or are you seeing a pattern emerging where all traditional weather patterns are going in for a toss?
Yes, we have seen because the pre-monsoon activities usually commences in the later part of March, or we can say in the month of April, when temperatures start increasing beyond 40 degree, 42, 45 degree, then only this triggering mechanism appears and leading to intense weather activities during which is known as pre-monsoon activities. But this time, as the warming started in the February itself, therefore these pre-monsoon showers preponed, and they have devastating damage to crops across many parts of northwest India and central India. So this is the change in weather pattern.
You're looking at the changing, in a way, the preempting of the warmth in February itself is leading to weather conditions of the kind, leading to cyclonic conditions in different parts of the country. Mr. Palawat, appreciate your joining us. I wish we had more time, but we will try and build on this theory of changing weather patterns in the weeks ahead. Thanks very much for joining me here on the News Today. Let's take a break. When we return, we are turning to our Good News Today story and our Get Real India stories. Back in a moment. You're watching the News Today. News without the noise.